how can you just throw everything away and start this new thing just to try to be happier? And of course, my response is, how could you deny your happiness in order to stay in the same rut? So reach out to people to help you if you need it. Get help from family, from friends. But I think that search of happiness has to be honest and has to be undertaken. It's just too important with only one life to live.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Pathfound. This is the podcast where we unpack the winding, messy, and meaningful journeys that lead to the work we love and a life that feels right. I'm Monica Argandonian, and each week I'm going to sit down with someone whose path didn't follow a straight line, but it still led them to purpose and fulfillment and often surprising success. These are real conversations about mentorship, pivots, networking, self-doubt, mistakes that we all make, and what it means to find direction when the map runs out. These stories are here to inspire and guide you. We'll dig into the things school didn't teach, like how to navigate career twists, life lessons, and big transitions. If you like what you hear, please share the podcast with a friend, subscribe, and leave us a review. You can also find us on Instagram at Pathfound Podcast or online at KeystoneNetwork.org. There you can send in your comments, suggest guests or topics, or even apply to be a guest yourself. This podcast is for you, my students, my peers, and anyone figuring it out as they go. As a longtime teacher and anthropologist, I've always believed in the power of stories. They remind us we're not alone, and that it's okay to change your mind, take a different route, or still be unsure of what comes next. This is my pivot too, and so I'm glad to have you on this journey with me. Now let's get started. Hi, everybody. Today on Pathfound, I sit down with Blair Bush, whose life took a radical turn from the architecture and construction world to full-time RV living and a career in comics and collectibles. Blair's story is about rethinking success, scaling down instead of always scaling up, and discovering that happiness comes not from things, but from experiences, family, and creating a life you actually love. In this conversation, Blair opens up about leaving behind a mapped-out career path, redefining work and money, and why choosing less can open the door to more. So, thank you for doing this.
Thank you for asking. It's so what I post about, like this transition that we've done, and it was largely based in switching to the RV family, which I'm sure Libby's told you about. But this transition, your podcast topic is what I post about, like in this kind of rambling, like nothing's quite coalescing, but I just have all these thoughts about everything that we changed for a better life. Both Libby and I mean, Libby kind of just furthered her own business while we did this transfer, but I did this massive pivot, and it impacts everything in life, in our lives. And it's something that I've wanted to talk about. And I do post about it, but it's never quite like I know I can get at something. There's something to this. So maybe a little bit of guided questioning might help my own thoughts about it. So no, thank you.
Yeah, no, we will. I will definitely ask questions and help that along. But yeah, I think you're exactly who I want to talk to. I mean, I'm doing this because, one, I'm inspired by people's stories. I love hearing how people got from point A to point B, and I'm doing it for my students because they need to hear it. They are told the same thing, and what do you want to be when you grow up, and pick a major, and then that's it. And so they're frustrated, and things are so rapidly changing. And I really believe, I've always believed that you have to love what you're doing. You should love what you're doing because you're spending a huge amount of time of your life that you will never get back. And if you don't love it, then you shouldn't be doing it.
But there's a pretty big distinction there, because I just wrote about this, that yes, you should love what you're doing, but not this sort of lip service. Oh yeah, I love what I'm doing.
Right.
And I had some of that. I definitely had some of that, because indoctrination has too negative a connotation to it. It's more of my parents did what they thought they should, and I wound up in a career that was by no means the right career for me. And so on my end, I'm not going so far as to try to help people with a podcast, although it's a great idea and I'm glad you're doing it. I just want my kids to know that there are very circuitous, windy paths.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be the straight shot. So yeah, I frame it a lot in terms of I'm going to tell my kids what I would have liked to have heard growing up.
And that's exactly what I want you to share.
Great. Perfect.
So, all right. So we're going to start a kind of origin story. Like, what were you like in high school? What do you think you wanted to be when you grew up?
It was mapped. I'd say by the time I was 6 or 7, it was mapped out. And unfortunately, based on an erroneous premise, which is that if a kid likes Legos, Legos and art and is good at both, then you should be an architect. I'm sorry, Legos, art, and math. And they made a big deal about, and I know that the split between people who are good at both art and math. I know there are people who are, but they were celebrating at the time and saying, "Oh, you're so strong in both sides." Architecture fits that bill very well. As I came to find out, I'll jump ahead quickly to college. I found out that is not true, but I'll come back to that. So origin story was, you love math, you love art, you excel in both. Architecture might be a good path, and I sort of jumped on that and continued thinking, "Oh, that makes sense. Their kind of baseline premise works for me, so great." So I excelled. It was from a small town in West Virginia, and excelled in high school and got scholarship to Tulane University for architecture. So my path was kind of lined up, and you're great at tests, you're great at school, you're doing well, you should go to college. You should go to college for this, and here's your money to do it. Go.
And you did.
I did, and I did well in school. I got my thesis, got an honorable mention. I have a Master of Architecture, and I did 10 years of working in architecture offices. However, and I'm allowed to say this because I am an architect, other people are not, a lot of architects wave their hands around and say, "Oh, the builder will figure it out." I didn't want to be that kind of architect, so I started working for builders and getting my hands, they did get dirty, doing some of the building and working for contractors, estimating and figuring out those times when architects, builders will figure it out. I was on the side of figuring it out, so it made my knowledge a lot more well-rounded, but there was still that itch of, are you doing the right thing? Is this what you should be doing? That sort of thing was still there. I thought that kind of slight transition within the same industry might be the solution, and not unfortunately, it taught me something. That pivot was not enough of a pivot.
So you liked architecture, but so what was it? What was the itch? What did you decide?
My mother has told me from a young age that I learned the phrase jack of all trades, master of none, from the time I want to say 5. And it's not a boastful thing. I have been just fairly good at most things I've tried, but not one thing has ever leapt out. So that has proven, I don't know if her saying that was a self-fulfilling prophecy, or it kind of guided me and made me think that I'll be good at everything and never have one thing, but I'm not sure where that landed. But there was something still ill at ease. A lot of it was, and I just wrote about this too, I vividly remember working in an office 60 to 80 hours, and at the time I had just been made vice president of a small construction firm, but it was residential, and I was the first after the 2 owners, I was the first executive they ever made. So I was doing well, and I had my ties and my cufflinks. You can't wear a coat because that's too pretentious for construction guys. That's one step too far. But I had my ties and my cufflinks, and I'd go to work every day, and it would be about a 60 to 80 hour work week. And I remember viscerally feeling, this is what it takes to succeed. I remember telling my wife, this is what it takes to succeed at this level. And the anxiety and stress was so bad that I still wonder this to this day. I said I liked it at the time. And now that's so anathema to me, that 60 to 80 hour work week and running yourself ragged and not having a work-life balance and all the things. But I vividly remember thinking it. And now I'm so the opposite of that. Family first, mental real estate, clear out your mind for life and do what you love, which I've now found. But it's odd to have that parallel track. 6 years ago now, I would have adamantly said 68-hour work week. That's what you got to do. Now, very much not that.
So how old are you? Like, how long had you done architecture? And then, that's a big jump. Like, one, to recognize it. A lot of people would recognize it and say, this is how it is, and I got to support a family or whatever it may be. So how old were you? What was it? And did you have another plan in place?
Sure. Fantastic multi-part question. I turned 50 in November, so I'm 49 now. I'm about to be 50. My timeline was graduated from college in 2000, and then I worked 10 years in architecture firms till 2010, and then 10 years in construction firms, general contractor firms until 2020. And I still don't remember the inception, but Libby, my wife, tells me I ran downstairs and said, "I got it. We're going to move into an RV." And I don't remember that initial impetus coming from me, but I believe her. That sounds like something I do at 7 a.m. when she's trying to wake up and I've been up for 2 hours. It coincided with COVID and losing a temper. I just changed jobs within the construction industry, and COVID happened. So I was kind of the newest guy on the totem pole. So it was an old mentor of mine, but he had to let me go. And that prompted us to finish renovating our house, sell it, and then make this massive move to live in an RV. So it was everything coalesced in this timeline. timeline of kind of perfect storm to change. There was no precise plan at all. It actually, that part of it was happenstance, and the money piece has been and still is really the only remaining source of agita. It's the financial thing. It is. It's when I talk to people about how could you make that change? Aren't you scared? Yes. Yeah. The financial piece is the trickiest, but because we tied in doing this minimalist lifestyle and wanting to spend as little as possible and do the more experiential thing that, full-time RV folks love to embrace, it's all about the experience, right? Not the stuff. I realized that one, I had a room full of comics. This isn't like, that's not a hyperbole. I had 18,000 comic books that I collected over the course of my life, which is a small room. It's a big closet that I made everywhere we moved, and I had for these comics. And if you would ask me before this 2020 and COVID and buying an RV and selling our house, if selling comic books was even on the horizon, I would have said, are you crazy? These are my prized possessions. This is a lifelong collection. Now, the thought of owning 18,000 comics makes me uneasy. And I've sold about a third. I've sold about a third of them. And that's now what I do, is clean and press collectibles for other people and sell mine. So it was sort of this, I've loved comics my whole life. I have all these comics. I'm very good at organization through my estimating and through my construction experience. And I'm a spreadsheet fanatic now. So I turned all that into what's in this very room with me right now. I was doing it from the road for 4 years, but luckily when we made this move, I got a space, and I'm a happy, not stress-free, but greatly stress-reduced fella these days. Did I answer your question? I'm sorry, Monica. Was that answering things?
You did, but okay, so you ran downstairs and said, we're selling everything and we're going to live in an RV. Okay, so this is two big leaps, job and lifestyle. I'm assuming the pandemic had something to do with this.
Very much so. Business slowed, and that's why I was let go from that current job. But I was only taking that job for financial reasons. I knew that I had tired of work in this industry, but bills come up and you got to work. And I have a degree, so that's what I should do. And I know that that's what happens to a lot of people. I know that, well, a job ended. Now would be a great time to really think about switching, but I can't because I have bills due. So I have to just continue on with what's going to make me the most money, what's going to be the easiest, where I already have contacts. Yeah, it's the distance from it has made me realize a little bit how big a shift and how big a leap that was. But I think if we had been completely cognizant, front of the brain as it happened, it might have even been more scary. I think the excitement of the unrealized potential of what we were doing and not knowing what we were getting into overtook the fear. And the selling of the house gave us a little runway too, in order to, I guess it did all work out, to have that component of finances at least taken care of for the short term by the sale of the house allowed us to both, again, my wife developed her company along the same trajectory she was on with minor tweaks. And I just said, yeah, I'm going to do this full time. I'm going to see if I can make a go of it. And it turns out I can.
Did you know how to do this? Like, did you know this was a job? And also tell us what you do.
I clean and press collectibles, which started when I had this collection and started selling them just as a side gig. I discovered and found out that people clean and press comic books. Okay, what does that mean? It's old t-shirt press, not old. I have new ones. They don't have to be old. It's t-shirt presses that are just used with comic books. So it's a basic principle of apply heat, you will flatten out comic books. But there's a lot more to it than that. And I just this past week tried an aqueous chemical bath for a comic book that whitened it in a way that stunned me. I thought it was like magic. So I didn't know that you could clean and press comic books. I thought I maybe had heard that at one point and thought it was a guy with an iron cleaning and pressing comic books. As I met people and sold my comics and got to know people and tried to make a reputation for just being honest and transparent, which is what I was in my other industry, being honest and transparent solves so many things in advance, I started pressing for myself to make my comics sell better. Then I found out people would pay me, and I started seeing comparable people and established websites with people charging for this. So I started doing that slowly, and it built very quickly because of a couple of things that I do that other people don't do. So I clean and press in these presses comic books, magazines, posters, tickets, video game manuals. And luckily, with pop culture being what it is, there is always a demand for people wanting their collectibles clean and pressed. And it's kind of a joyful thing because most people, it's hard to be angry when you're getting your thing that you treasure improved.
Right.
So it's kind of this built-in joy. So I did not know that was a job. And I am now celebrating very much. And still blows my mind that I'm still kind of creating this job because I just added in. Now I'm actually starting to sell comic books for other people. I'm giving advice on pressing to other people. So I'm selling on commission. I'm creating some of my own like art projects that I can sell that are comic based. It's everything I wanted and didn't know I wanted, not to be trite, because I'm creating my own workday every day. I was a big fan of schedule and everyone look at your calendar and everything that's organized, you can overcome any problem. When it's just me instead of running other people, I can fill my day in different ways. And I realize, oh, I have an hour for this. Now I can build this in. It's a very liberating experience, but it also just continues to shock and amaze me. I realize you're literally just making all this up. This isn't a prescribed notion of a job. This is where do you want to go next? And it's still only a quarter of the salary that I made at a real job. And that's tricky. That is tricky. And it does demand that we two-income household, but it's upward trajectory. And I don't see any reason why I can't get to that full office salary as an executive in the next 5 years that I was. And frankly, I'm hoping for 2, but I don't want to set down realistic goals. So yeah, it's now a real job and I'm making it my own.
That is incredible. I mean, that's what we all hope for, right? To find that.
But it's confusing because of the residual. My mom always asked about my desk. Her definition of success throughout my life has been, do you have a desk in your office where you work? How big is your desk? Is it your own desk? Or are you sharing your desk? She's a little desk focused, but I get that as a stand-in as what she thinks is a success. I get it. I have no idea where it's going to affect. I'm sorry.
What? So let me just ask you this. So how would you define success? How would you define it?
Oh, that's it. That's this. I was starting to say, and I will come back to the redefining success because there's this residual guilt for not following my prescribed path. As much as I intellectually know that I've made a better choice for me and our family, everything kind of why I brought up my mom as a proud Jewish mama's boy, I can say that I still talk to her all the time and she's a bit of a metric for me. But that guilt of not following the path and by her estimation, me wasting my potential because I'm not making as much money as I could, it's hard to combat that. I do combat it. And again, intellectually, I know that I put my measure of success to get to your question is happiness over money for sure, experience over stuff, experience over materialism. And I know that's simplistic, but that truly impacts every single thing. If we keep our expenses to a minimum and we're at our job at the right amount, which I believe is 30 to 40 hours a week, we're with our sons. This is what comes up to me every time. Our sons are now 8 and 7, about to be 9 and 7. If I had stayed in the job that I had, I would have only seen my children, I did the math once, like 10% of what I've seen them over these last 4 years. I only would have seen them after hours on a weekday, which could be as late as 8, so I might only have tucked them in. And on the weekends, it's the same thing that this whole society kind of celebrates. You're on the weekend, you're on your time, so you're tired. And how many stereotypical things are the parents? Hey, this is my time, I just want to relax. Right. That's not really having a family to me. So this way, I'm done at 5 o'clock every night. We get the kids from school and we're with our family. We're experiencing. So success to me is my most important thing is my family and my children and making 2 good humans that can take the place of my wife and me when we're gone. I mean, it is kind of as simple as that. I want them to be afforded every opportunity I wasn't. And I know, again, that's a little trite too, but spending this time with them, there's only so much time we get with family till they go and do their own thing. So it was really important to me to be part of that, bringing up our kids instead of just kind of doing it from the periphery.
Yeah, I have a 13 and 16-year-old, and I can't believe how fast that went.
It's going so fast. Right, exactly.
Everybody tells you that, and when they're little, and it sounds so, again, trite, but it is so true.
You have no concept of it until it flies by. Yeah. And I don't want to, I don't want to miss, mine will be 13 tomorrow. Yeah, that's how it goes. Sure.
So how did the RVing and that life, the RV life, play into all this? I mean, there's one thing to do a career pivot, but you sold your house, you sold everything. And now you've been on the road for 4 years.
And it's very odd because at the time I was working for higher end residential architectural clients. So I would often do the drawings for the general contractor. We'd be design build, and affluent folks who wanted to do renovations would come to us, and that was our niche. Mm-hmm. And I could talk to those customers and straddle the line of building an architect, and a lot of those clients wanted to talk to the architect in a tie rather than the guy with his hammer out. And I get all that. I did it again. I blanked out the way, Monica, I'm sorry, I blanked out the way I was going.
No worries. The RV life.
The RV.
Yeah.
So working for these big residential guys and seeing these giant rooms and giant houses, I don't know know exactly the point that it clicked over, but I knew that when we are going to build a house soon. When we build a house, I don't want to air condition or heat a space that we don't use all the time. So I think that economy of architecture and designing spaces and these ridiculously oversized houses. So I think, and actually, like I said, Monica, maybe you were going to start making me figure out where all this came from. I think actually that was a lot of it. Seeing the excess, I think, bugged me a little bit. So the idea of tiny homes and mobile homes in RV life is that things can still be nice and beautiful and great spaces, but you just don't need that much space, especially if you can only occupy so much space a day. So I think that started to feed the minimalist approach to life, and realizing that I was one of those guys, I've seen memes about him, but one of those guys that has a box of mismatched chair legs just in case one day you're going to need one of those legs. And we had so much stuff. And I know we're not unusual in that way. Basements and garages are full of stuff. And once that sort of tipped over, it was hard not to start looking at everything in our lives that way, which is the whole taking what works for you, leaving the rest behind, and not having so much clutter. So it definitely impacts all aspects of our lives across the board.
We are a slave to our things.
The more stuff we have, the more mints we do, 100%. And that was, so every time we add something to our gear box, it's okay, do we want these inflatable kayaks? Yes, we're going to have to wipe them down. And by the way, inflatable kayaks are one of the best purchases we ever made as an RV family. They're just so good and so fun. And it's always nice to hop into the water. But getting that extra stuff, I couldn't agree more. We are a slave to our stuff.
Okay, so again, it's a big leap, right? You're RVing. I assume Libby, your wife, is on board. Does she think you're crazy?
She's either hit it well for 5 years or not. And I actually don't take that for granted either. That, boy, what an impact that has on a relationship too, to literally be, so for 4 years, we have been in the same little capsule. I mean, granted, it's a bigger travel trailer. It's 35 feet long, but 8 feet wide. So we've been in the same 400 square foot tube with each other for 4 years, both living and working. It was only this year that I came and got this outdoor space. I keep motioning. Sorry. I'm in my own outdoor space, kind of my little outdoor shed here that I can do my work in. But she was on board. I mean, it first gave me the wide-eyed, where is this coming from? Why do you have to be like this in the morning so early kind of thing? But it persisted. And I guess it was right when the pandemic was starting. So the gears must have been turning for just thinking outside the box of what are we going to do? And that being tied in one place, we really had not intended to be in Baltimore for very long, which is where our house was. It was, again, circumstantially, we wound up there, and circumstantially, I wound up at a job, which I think is, I don't have the stats, but I think more people that I know wind up in their career and their location based on circumstantial stuff. And the reevaluation and wanting to figure out, what do we actually want? Let's make everything a clean slate for a minute, which is a hard enough prospect in and of itself, even in your own mind, to say, okay, but what do we really want outside of what's been preconceived? Mm-hmm. What do we actually want? And I found myself it's difficult to answer that, but I know that Libby, back to the question, Libby was on board as we talked about the pros and cons of it. And then as we realized, hey, we're in a bit of a weird pandemic time, money is uncertain, why don't we at least ditch the mortgage, and then we can find a new place to live? Maybe it will be the same path we were on, just in a different place, or maybe it will breathe new life into what we want. And it was the latter. It was finding out that we were going to change more than just our geography or our jobs. I would actually change industries.
What has been the best thing about RVing and that life?
I love that we can be in the same bed at night and often wake up, and because we would switch locations so much, it's not like we forgot where we were, but if we'd arrived someplace at night, we'd wake up in the same bed and see a vastly different vista outside the window. So it was kind of a form of teleportation, because you take your stuff and your house with you. We stayed on a lot of riversides and looking out the ocean. So just opening the door and seeing a river, or opening the door and seeing an ocean of the same door, is just a bit of a weird and kind of a neat magical trick. I mean, I know it's just us relocating, but it does always seem like magic. So that's been a pretty neat thing to discover each morning.
What's been the most challenging?
The most challenging is the daily thoughts of, are we doing this right? Which is the thing that's the most kind of upsetting. Like, if that's our biggest downfall right now, that are we doing it right? I'd like to dispel that. Like, I don't feel like if we are happy and healthy, we should have to deal with those residual pressure point. So those, again, my mom saying, is your desk big enough? Do you have a desk? I don't feel like that should be I'd like to get over that, I guess is what I'm saying. And I think I'm hoping that by instilling in my boys that these paths are possible, they won't ever have but they won't have a lot of doubts or second guessing because they aren't doing that traditional unfound path.
So what kind of things do you share with your kids? Where do you see them? You just said, not necessarily the traditional path. They're still young, but they're going to go off to high school. And what do you tell them? And what advice would you give them?
What you said already, do what you love, is a big one. That gets reinforced a lot, but that gets paired with trying to tell them whenever I come across a weird job, I'd like to share that with them. Like, guys, there is no end to weirdo jobs out there that you can do for your whole life that you've never even heard of. It might be your perfect, exactly what you want to do and get income from, but we also keep the career path and the income generation. I know they're young, but we talk about both pieces of that. Like, be happy with your career. Income generation is us collecting money in order to do things important in our life. And of course, it comes up most often when want to go out to dinner more. Guys, remember, we're with you more of the time. We do things that don't cost money and we get to be together as a family more, but we sometimes can't go out to dinner as much as we'd like. And it's those conversations with kiddos at 7 and 8 that actually help teach me about what I'm thinking, because if we have explained this to them in terms that they can understand, I think that helps my understanding of where we are, that it is still experiences over money, experiences over materials, and experiences over things. And your day should be filled being happy, not full of drudgery.
So, and I think that's great, but I'm gonna play devil's advocate a little bit here.
Please.
I have college students who are getting in debt over, paying for their college degree, which they've been told to do. They are very concerned about not being able to buy a house, or, the job market's really tough. And I think as you get older and you've had this great experience and I agree with you totally. It's experience over stuff, and we don't need big houses and all those kinds of things. I think realistically, they want to make a good living, right? They want to do that. So what would you tell them? Like, not just your kids, but what would you tell anybody who's in college or thinking about college or just graduated or in their late 20s and trying to still figure things out?
I am really glad that I have a few years before I have to give my kids advice at that level yet, because it is dark. It's daunting, but I do know this. I know something that I don't know is that I don't know if I can suggest college for my kids as strongly as I had thought I would up until a few years ago. There are alternative paths to even college, and this is a new one for me. I again, for most of my life, will force my kids to go to college. That is the best path. I don't know anymore. So I'm now broadening my possible branching paths a little bit to say that college isn't a necessity, but we want to discuss why it's not a necessity. Those college loans, if I had not been, and I was one of the lucky ones to have my active loans forgiven before they stopped doing it.
Me too.
If that hadn't happened, I would have, you too. And if that hadn't happened, this would be, we would have been in a very different, I would say there were at least a dozen very close calls to me going back into my industry because things are too tight. Financially, it's too stressful. I can't live like this. It's too much. As much as I'm happy in the career, the financial pieces, it's too daunting. We hung in and we persevered. There's no advice there other than changing at this late of an age, at 49, is not for the queasy, I would say for sure. But the payoff is ultimately by far rewarding enough to have done it. For 20-something, like you're saying, I think the alternative housing stuff, the tiny homes, which are ridiculously affordable. And again, having an RV is not for everybody either. That's a very big swing in a different.
Right.
It's not like primal where you're hunting and gathering. But on one hand, it kind of is, because you have to know where your water source is. You have to get your food. You have to, that's not for everybody. But having a tiny home, which can be gotten pre-ordered, there's some beautiful ones for like $30,000. So this whole notion of mortgage and debt immediately to live the American dream, our boys already know that small is okay, that outdoor space is plentiful, that we want to be home with each other. So maybe, they're looking forward to building our house. And again, we are going to build a house, but it's just not the driving force, because not to be silly, but our home is in our RV. Our house is our RV. It is very much a home. It's very much, we have enough space to have fun, to sleep, to eat, and do all the necessities. difficulties without extra space. So again, back to advice for 20 somethings, I would still say, even if it seems scary and even if resources are tight, going after happiness is too important not to take that stab and consider those alternative housing things. Staying with parents. We stayed with, while we waited for our house to sell, we stayed with her parents for 69 months. And yeah, it was a little taxing on them, but we made up for it by doing things for them. It's just too important. Happiness in your career, with one life, it's too important not to take the chance, not to consider a change, not to go after what's happiest.
Yeah. Then goes to my next question, which is about, and you mentioned it earlier, your mental health, your physical health. If you hadn't done any of this, if you had stayed and been doing what you were doing, 10 years ago, what impact has this had on your overall health?
It is a massive mental health upgrade. So without getting too detailed, the construction industry has a lot of drinkers. What am I saying? Most industries have a lot of drinkers. The drinking in that industry was getting I do not drink anymore. I'm 14 years sober and in programs, but I know that my drinking was getting out of control in that lifestyle because meetings were at bars. We would do work after hours with booze in the office. And I know that it was a stress, anxiety coping mechanism. And I know that I run a couple recovery programs now, a couple meetings a week. That is a very common thing that everyone turns to, diverting themselves with substances or alcohol. I might have been in a real bad place if I had stayed in that career. And now, instead of continuing to imbibe, I'm running meetings for people in recovery. The stress level is diametrically opposite. I mean, it was just a presence. My job was forefront of my brain at all times because if a client called and didn't like their paint or their toilet had a problem, I felt like I was a surgeon on call for that whole career. But I thought that was what made me good at my job. And it was good that I was accessible for everybody but me. And this is still client serving and front facing. And I love my clients, and I'm actually getting to know my clients as well or better than I did in the residential construction industry. So I know a lot of their buddies now. I still have clients. I still have that. Of course, we want to serve our clients and do well by them, but it's not this debilitating and ever-present anxiety over my job.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
One, that you found it, that you've recovered, and that you found this way to improve that mental health. So going back a little bit more, you talked about running down the stairs and telling your wife all this. She's clearly been on board. You have to have a strong relationship if you're living in, a 300 square foot box. I think you posted something about that on your Instagram. And I don't think I talk a lot about careers and paths and things like that, but not as much about relationships, surrounding yourself by people who support you and even your partner, right? Your life partner. And what role has that played in all of this?
We often remind each other and give ourselves a high five or a kiss and say, this is not for the faint of heart. This lifestyle and this proximity to each other has really advanced our relationship quite a bit. And it by no means has all been easy at all. We've had some hard conversations and we have come out the other side. I mean, because we're both small businesses. And again, because she pivoted enough in her business, and because I had this huge pivot in my business, we have so many overlaps as far as talking about strategies, bouncing ideas off each other. I'm lucky it's her. I'm very lucky that it's her, because I think the proximity and the tightness of space would wean out couples who weren't suited to each other very quickly. But not only is our personal relationship stronger, we have been able to use each other as sounding boards for our burgeoning small businesses. So she's been invaluable. It's nice that we're nowhere near the same industry, although we both serve clients, because we can come and say, I had this happen today. And then she'll, because her head's not in it at all, will come up with this great kind of either tweak to what I'm doing or suggesting to do something new. I've been too close to it. Just that whole proximity thing. If you're too close to it, sometimes you don't see a solution. So she has done that for me a lot. I hopefully have done that for her at least a couple of times. I think I have, but I think it's a two-way street. But that proximity has been relationship building for sure.
That's awesome. So what would you want to tell people? I've asked you these questions. You said you were looking forward to this opportunity to kind of put this all out there. What do you want people to know? What advice would you give?
I would say happiness comes first. It's got to. By saying happiness comes first, I think a lot of people would say, well, of course it comes first. You're supposed to be happy. What I mean by that, to drill down on it, is I'm still 4 years into this, still questioning, should I have done this? It's not very loud anymore in my head, and it's not very often, but it's still kind of like, what if you had stayed? And pretty quickly it goes to, no, you should not not have stayed, that's for sure. But is this the right thing? I think is this the right thing is a healthy question to ask yourself. But I also know if we're meditating on it and really being honest with ourselves, I think we can get to some answers about what makes us individually happy. So I'd say I've heard people say it, especially when we started, how can you just throw everything away and start this new thing just to try to be happier? And of course, my response is, how could you deny your happiness in order to stay in the same rut? So reach out to people to help you if you need it. Get help from family, from friends. But I think that search of happiness has to be honest and has to be undertaken. It's just too important with only one life to live.
How do you know what makes you happy?
I wish I knew the answer to that because of that second guessing of things, because it's a non-traditional path. I do sometimes question that, like, okay, you've asked yourself the question and you've answered it. Is that answer honest? And that can get into a weird circular thought of, can I trust my own thoughts? Do I really feel this way? And I don't know how to end that cycle other than to say, you know what, this is me and my honest response at this moment as honestly as I can say it. And saying this out loud to you, Monica, makes it feel even more important and real. I am happier for everything I have done by a long shot. And if that requires a bit of financial tightening and figuring out some finances, okay, it's just still so very worth it. These last 5 years have made this pivot.
If you could go back and tell your 21-year-old self something that you now know, what would you tell? What would you tell your 21-year-old self?
Credit cards do not go away. That's one.
That's excellent.
Boy, do I hate those guys on college campuses. That hate's a strong word, but it's pretty close. The guys on college campuses just handing out credit cards to college kids in New Orleans outside of bars when the drinking age was 18 was an opportunity. They were opportunistic. They knew their target audience for sure.
They're good at what they do.
They're good at what they do. Yeah. Watch the credit card. Don't incorporate the whole we have more than we can afford because it's the American dream. Don't do the keeping up with the Joneses. And frankly, in college, it was more of a don't drink away your credit cards. I wasn't trying to buy things. I was drinking them away in college. But that same thought of the minimalist lifestyle would say, dude, it does not have to be big. It does not have to be grandiose. It can still be architecture, life, anything. It can still be beautiful and small. And sometimes in that smaller microcosm can be more worthwhile because you're more intimate. And again, I'm kind of digging this because it's not only the architectural applications, but the life implications. A more intimate life, a smaller life can be more validating, can be more enjoyable to me. People need a big life, that's fine. But yeah, I would say scale down. I guess if I was in the time machine and time was a factor and I only had a couple seconds, I would say, dude, scale down, and don't credit card.
That is excellent advice. I wish I could go back and tell myself that too. So where can we find you? You're on Instagram.
I am on Instagram. Yeah, I'm on Instagram. I have two accounts on Instagram. One is for the RV life and minimalist lifestyle, which is at _housebus, HAUSBUS. And the other is for the comic book and collectibles, which is at Blair's Comics.
By the way, I've been following you on Instagram. And one of the best posts that made me laugh and speaks to happiness was when you were fixing the water pump space and you open up that space and you're like, look, we have to fix this water pump, but we just found space. And space is so, right? You need space in this RV and it's like 2x3 and we can put stuff in there. And you were so happy.
Did you know that? And that was not staged. That was authentic joy at finding about 8 square feet under the fridge. We have all of our boots and our less worn shoes under there now. Yeah. Thank you for seeing that. Yeah, that was great. Yeah. And your Instagram posts give joy. I mean, you've been to some beautiful places.
Oh, thanks.
You're having a great time. And I think it's amazing what you're doing. Thank you so much for talking with me and doing this. That was inspiring.
Monica, I really feel like, especially the last question, I feel like really taught me and really did focus these kind of errant thoughts that I've been having for a long time. So thank you. This really has given me a little more direction. I've been wanting to maybe turn all of this kind of experience into a bigger format, like a book or something. So I think that telling my younger self to scale down, I think is giving me a real touch point for a little bit more specific thoughts. So thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to Pathfound. If anything we talked about today connected with you or gave you a new perspective, we'd love it if you subscribed, left a review, or shared the episode with someone you care about. You can also find us on Instagram at Pathfound Podcast. To explore more stories, resources, and ways to get involved, visit KeystoneNetwork.org. This podcast is just one part of the journey. At Keystone Network, we're helping young people and anyone figuring it out as they go build meaningful futures one step at a time. A huge thank you to my podcast editor, David Strutt. You can find him on LinkedIn for helping bring these stories to life, and to Elizabeth Miner at Silvermine Creative for the beautiful artwork and web design. And if you're on your own path, navigating the unknown, making a pivot, or simply figuring it out as you go, just know you're not alone. The route may not be linear, but there's always a way forward. I'm Monica Argandonia, and I'll see you next time on Pathfound.